All right, folks, this is going to be a quick walkthrough of what is called the New Jersey Real Estate Sales Contract, which is a standard form that most all realtors use to establish the beginning point for our relationship when we're purchasing or selling a home. So what we have here is page one. Page one is really a notice, and this notice is to tell you that you should be using an attorney, and it's also to establish what the relationship with the real estate broker is, whether it's a buyer's agent, a seller's agent, a dual agent. And the idea is it's reinforcing on this page, along with the signature requirement, that you are going to have an attorney present and giving you advisory services throughout the process. And it stresses that that's super important. You can go without, most don't, and you're at a disadvantage if you do. So that's what this page is for. As we move down through the rest of the agreement, it basically tells you the table of contents and then establishes who the parties are that the agreement is between. So this would be the buyers and the sellers with their addresses, as well as the target address, the county, and the block and lot of the property. All of this should be filled out by your real estate agent. You are just going to review it. Important aspect to this document is your purchase price. So the purchase price is the offer price that you are making to the seller, and you're going to say to them, I will give you this much. And it also tells that you'll put down a deposit, and there's an initial deposit and then an additional deposit. Initial deposit is the check that you give when you're submitting the offer, and an additional deposit is the deposit that you will give as a good faith effort once you get through the attorney review process. And typically that's a much more substantial amount than what you would give in the initial deposit amount. Initial deposits have gone by the wayside in recent, but they still do have applicability. Most offers do not include an initial deposit. They just include an additional deposit. So that occurs after you're out of attorney review within the days that are defined in this agreement. It also defines where you hold the initial deposit, whether it's with your attorney or their attorney, and what date that initial deposit is due by. You will note throughout the agreement, if a date is not entered, there is always a default date that's in there. So in this instance, if you entered no date under B, line 56, and you said, I'm going to leave it blank, it would then be a 10-day timer from the time that the contract's delivered to the buyer and seller. It will also include things like your loan type and your principal loan amount, along with duration, also filled out by your agent. There is a date required for the mortgage commitment. That date is usually at least 30 days, but it can be more depending on the type of property or the technicalities around the property. So keep that in mind. And that should also be filled in by your real estate agent. And then we pick the closing date. Typical closing dates are within 45 to 60 days, but they can be extended depending upon the type of contract that you're negotiating. All of the other sections that you see here that have no blue boxes are ones that are standard verbiage that are not actually modified. You can have your attorney modify them when you're in attorney review, but the real estate agent will not modify those terms. Anything that's in black is a standard term and sticks until you get to attorney review. For items included in the sale, this should be a detailed list of the items, such as the kitchen appliances, washer, dryer, if there's a generator that's going to be included with the house. You want this to be as specific as possible. It's a very important aspect because what you put in here is what is to be delivered with the home. I do suggest if you suspect that someone would try to swap a refrigerator, you could get as specific as putting the model of the refrigerator in this box. So keep that in mind. Items that are excluded from the sale. For instance, someone might sell a pool and take their pool cleaner with them or the robot for the cleaner. That is something that might be excluded. So anything that's excluded must be there. And it should also be made reference to the MLS sheet. All contracts should be submitted with the MLS sheet. That way you have proof of what was promised as you go through. So I'm going to quickly go through the fields that are only modifiable. A certificate of occupancy. So typically you have to get a CO. Many towns just require a smoke detection or a smoke certificate. The certificate of occupancy typically has an amount assigned to it. Many times $500 to $1,000 is that. And what that means is that the seller will only pay up to a particular amount to get the certificate of occupancy done. In municipal assessments, this is an important one. So if you are the seller and you know about a municipal assessment, you need to disclose that along with the amount so that the buyer understands what they're getting into when they purchase your home. These can vary in fees, but they could be for things like road repairs, improvements in systems around the town, and vice versa. When you talk about all of these fields here, it's basically asking about the quality of the title and insurability. This box here would typically indicate if it's a single family home, single family, if it's multifamily, multifamily, and so on and so forth. Tenancies, what this means is that do you have a tenant in the property? If you do, you would indicate applicable or not applicable, and then you would fill out the information for the tenants and the rent, security deposit, and term. That the reason for that is those will be things that you will need to acquire from the seller when you are purchasing the home and closing. You'll need to get those deposits. If the house was built prior to 1978, lead paint disclosure is required. That is also a form that we will talk about in another lesson. All of the rest of these fields here are basically standardized fields. You have the right to inspections. If you choose them, you can put in dates if you want to modify them if they're extended past the dates that are covered. But generally, each of these has, again, a default date that you would use. So if there was a POET system, which most homes in our area do not have, you would say not applicable or applicable. In cesspools, if there is a cesspool, the state of New Jersey now requires that be addressed before the transition of the property, but you would have to put that whether it's applicable or not. And then you would agree who is going to pay for those at what point in the process. As I scroll through here, these are all standard terms and unmodifiable. So for termite and wood boring insects, there is the option to enter dates, but typically most leave these as the default days, after attorney review. And that will be blank in most contracts, along with the buyer's right to inspections, because those will be updated during the attorney review process as well. So it's not uncommon for those fields to be blank. And as we move further down, I'm going to bring you down here to where we're going to enter the information around the deal. So all those are fixed fields. So now if there's any kind of declaration of the broker's relationship, they will enter it here. They will also tell what they're operating as, whether they're a seller's agent, buyer's agent, disclosed dual agent, or a transaction broker. And then down below, there will be listing information here, all populated by the real estate agent. And this details all of their real estate license numbers, the firms they work for, and also the commission structure. So it's important for buyers to know that in the state of New Jersey, the sellers typically pay all of the buyers related real estate fees. So those will be they're called splits often. That information will be disclosed here. It is not uncommon to have something like a $199 flat commission fee for some brokerages. Weichert does that as well, and that is a fee for doing the transaction with that brokerage. So that's something that you'll see there sometimes. You'll disclose, whether you are a licensed real estate agent or a family member is. That would be disclosed in the contract. And then as I scroll down here even more, there is a series of addendas that get attached. All of them are relevant to particular home types. Your agent should be picking them for the home type that you have. So for instance, if you have a well on your property, you should be doing private well testing, which locally it's generally a traditional amount that the seller pays to get the well tested. And that would be something that you do. Additional contractual provisions. This would be if there is no contingencies, you could put that in there. If there is, and you can stress that. If there is a longer or a flexible date that you can contingent. Things that you want to translate to them in a contractual provision to say that there would be or won't be a particular contingency in place. And then lastly, you just have signatures and a witness. The real estate agent is typically the witness, and you will sign the document. Each and every page has initials on the bottom to validate that you have viewed and reviewed each and every page. And that is the New Jersey sales contract. Let us know if you have any questions.